to Planning Commissioner, to Dublin City Council, and to the Congress of the United States. And more than that, I got to see him announced for President of the United States. An amazing journey. Eric Swalwell. I thought he was here.
Thank you, Ellis and Sharon. And
hi, how are you?
It's been a remarkable time for our club. And Ellis, last year, just over a year ago, I'll never forget you and Sharon, and many from our club, being on, the convention floor in San Francisco as we spoke. And it was a campaign that we ran on ending gun violence, taking on climate, taking on these generational issues. Didn't work out the way I wanted, but I just saw a poll a couple days ago that Lisa Tucker, who's my consultant and campaign manager for the presidential campaign, she showed me a poll that said that on Democratic voters' minds, a top 3 issue is now ending gun violence. And if we played a small part in elevating that issue by talking about it and wearing an orange ribbon, on the debate stage and, going to Parkland to kick off the race, then that makes it all worth it. And so just thank you, Ellis and Sharon and everyone on the call for all you're doing to continue to, not just protect what we've already won and achieved, keeping Josh Harder just over, the Altamont in the Congress, but believing that we can text and phone bank and write postcards and win the Senate and, of course, win the White House. Tim Sobrani's also on this call. And Tim, thank you. I can't thank you enough. He's an educator, and thank you to all our educators right now. This is a tough time, to be in that business. And I'll talk about that in a second. I also see Elena Condes on the call. She's running for Superior Court judge and is the first Latinx candidate to run for Superior Court judge. I'm fully supporting her, and I hope you will consider that too. She won by over 10,000 votes in the primary, but you have to.
He'll be speaking for 2 minutes after Eric leaves the screen.
Great.
Yeah, thanks.
Great. And I also see Ann Crosby. Oh, thank you. Oh. So I first want to just say that by sending me to Congress and being the first club to endorse me, you've given me the privilege of working on a lot of issues that people care about. And I mentioned ending gun violence, and that one, I was fortunate back in 2016 after we had gone through Sandy Hook and we had just been whiplashed. Before that there'd been Aurora, just so many mass shooting after mass shooting, and our Democratic caucus saw a Republican Congress that was failing to stand up and do anything about it. And we'd really reached a low point. And we had a caucus meeting one Wednesday morning during the dog days of summer, and John Lewis spoke up and said, "My friends, if you are willing to go along with me for something that you may think is a little bit uncomfortable and a little bit unpleasant, I promise you it will bring us, the change that we ultimately want." And when John Lewis speaks, he's the only person in our caucus where everybody stops speaking and listens. That just, even Speaker Pelosi, she's got a lot of, power and respect, but John Lewis is the person that can just quickly silence a room. And he said, "I propose we go in and take a seat on the House floor until our colleagues are willing to stand up on gun violence." And this was after the Pulse nightclub shooting. And so we went, and I didn't really know where it would lead us, how long we would sit. And John kept telling us that sometimes in our country, you have to cause what he calls good, necessary trouble. And so I sat on the floor with John for 26 hours. And of course, the Republicans cut the C-SPAN feed, and we persisted. And John inspired us. He'd been through so much worse for him. sitting on the floor of the House of Representatives, where he was now a member of Congress, was a walk in the park compared to going across the Edmund Pettus bridge and having his skull cracked open by a police officer's baton. And so it was such a privilege to work with John. And, you know, it's such a loss. Today was the first day we were in session where, you know, he was no longer with us. And the place felt, you know, much emptier without his character and conviction. But I think it was fitting that the last public appearance he made was at the Black Lives Matter memorial and streetscape in Washington, D.C. And I think that symbolized, you know, John recognizing that the next generation was stepping up and doing the good and necessary trouble it would take to bring, you know, equality and opportunity and justice for all of us. So his work goes on. We keep marching, and I know our club will as well. This week, we are hoping to have a deal on COVID. And I just briefly want to tell you, in Alameda County today, we had only 29 new cases, which is the first time that we've been in double digits in about over a month. So that's very good news. I think we were very serious from the beginning. And then because we saw other states start to come out early and open up, it gave a false sense of security among people. And we had sheltered in place the earliest, and you started to see the numbers skyrocket to 350. A couple times we had around 350 new cases a day and a positive rate of 5%. So if we can keep this trend, bring it back down in the low, you know, double digits, that will allow our hospitals to free up in their capacity to take care of other sick patients, and also for us to go back to the phasing out of sheltering in place. My priority is going to continue to be legislation that supports testing, tracing, and treating, and of course, finding a vaccine and distributing it free and to everybody as quickly and safely as possible. Of course, we need to extend unemployment insurance, which will run out this week. We also, in the HEROES Act that we passed, do that to the end of the year. We extend the student loan debt forgiveness all the way into 2021 in the HEROES Act. We give an 80% employee retention tax credit to any employer of any size that retains their employees, recognizing that that is so important right now for people to have paychecks. And we reload the Paycheck Protection Plan and provide hazard pay of at least $15 an hour, kind of a standard minimum wage for our frontline healthcare workers. So many places where they don't make that across the country. So we're negotiating right now with the Senate. Ellis, you sent me something about liability protections that would be given up. And I want to assure you that as I consider, you know, what deal we're going to take, we cannot trade the need for employers to protect their employees, the need for employers to protect consumers of their businesses, and the incentives you want them to have to do so. And giving a blanket liability from any claim, I think is not safe and would disincentivize, you know, the measures that we want people to take. But also, any business that says that liability protections is what, you know, is keeping them from opening up is not being straight. What is keeping them from not opening up is that people don't feel safe. That's what all of the polling shows. That's what the anecdote shows, is that people don't feel safe.
Eric, to keep the story straight, holding companies civilly liable for financial fines doesn't work. We know that doesn't work. So let them have it, and instead, the person who makes the decision to do something that harms others, hold them criminally liable. Jail cells work as a deterrent. My argument.
Yep. No, I hear you, and I've you know, also been working with you know, just people who represent, you know, plaintiffs and class actions right now. And what I've been told, something that's very disturbing, is even for small businesses who paid for years to have business continuity insurance, that those claims are being denied because the insurance carriers are refusing to pay out. And so, again, I'm afraid that if we give immunity to businesses, insurance carriers don't pay out, that it's really going to be, big banks and insurance carriers are the ones who are going to profit off of all of this, and small businesses and any person, who gets sick or is injured worse because of this is going to pay the price. So we cannot let that happen. And Ellis, thank you for bringing that to my attention. But I promise you that is front and center on my radar. And then
it's a card that you can think about playing.
Yes,
Okay.
a criminal I think a criminal statute is also. We'd have to find a federal nexus, but locally, certainly every state is able to do that, and perhaps it would just take the leading state in the country, California, to do that, to send a signal. And then finally, and I want to get to questions. We are still pressing the George Floyd Act to get a vote in Congress, recognizing Black Lives Matter, but they matter more than just making police reforms. That's a part of it, but also having social justice reforms in the way that we prioritize our budgeting, investing in schools and healthcare and childcare, as well as job opportunities and job training. We need not a crime bill, but a hope bill. And so, that is the hope, is to get the George Floyd Act moving, but also, reimagine how we budget locally, not statewide and nationally. But it's also the work that you're doing that is moving just the conscience of the community. We can make changes legislatively, but because you care, because you show up, because you're allies with Black and brown communities, we're changing the social, cultural, religious, and educational fabric of this country, and that is going to go a long way. And so I'm so grateful that this club cares to do it. So with that, Alice, I'm going to kick it back to you, and happy to take any questions.
What I'd like to do is to go into that split screen mode and share what the questions were, rather than repeating somebody else's. Go in here and
Don't phase them out.
Sharon, I have to. She's telling me what to do when I'm having trouble doing it. Okay, we get that. You got my screen up there? Hello?
Yes, it looks good.
Okay, let me scroll down to, here are the questions. The first one, Eric already answered. Okay, the second one is from Michael Karsh about HJR 48.
I can't see Eric.
I can't help that.
So you can click active speaker video in the upper right-hand corner, and it shows you that, whoever's speaking.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I get Eric back on my screen.
He'll show up on the
Yeah,
right.
there he is. Okay, well, you almost had him.
When he starts talking, he'll pop up.
Okay, so
Thank you, Bob.
did the technology work?
Yeah, something like that.
Anyway, Michael Karsh would like to know why Eric hasn't co-sponsored House Joint Resolution 48, which is basically corporations are not people, and money is not speech.
Yeah, Michael, I've looked at this, and you and others have asked me about this. So I support Ending Citizens United. I actually believe we should have publicly financed campaigns. My issue with this, and I hope it would get to the floor where we could make amendments to this bill, is that it actually, the way that it defines a corporation, it actually, I think, unfairly creates like rights for corporations that we don't want them to have. And that if you look at the party is actually split on this, and the people who have not signed on, who are, I think, have just as a progressive view as I do, don't want to afford rights that you would have to afford to corporations to make some of the constitutional arguments about corporations and people. So I'm happy to send over to you just the legal thinking that I have on this, and I see your email there, Michael. I'm
Yeah.
going to send that to you. But there are, it just gets in the resolution they have, as they define a corporation, I don't think intentionally, but in practice, what it would do is it would afford corporations rights that we don't want them to have. And so you look at who supports that resolution, who doesn't. There's no common thread among our caucus of it's only progressives. It actually is all over the place. And I think the people who oppose it, and there's a lot who do or don't oppose it, who have not signed on to it, don't want to make that leap with businesses. So I am on the For the People Act, which ends Citizens United as far as we can in Congress without a constitutional amendment. And also, as I said, I want publicly financed campaigns. But Michael, making a note to email you the issues that we've had. And we've reached out to the bill sponsors on this as well, asking them to just make these corrections. We haven't had luck, but it's good reason for me to go back and look at that.
Thank you. Let's see, wrong direction. Okay, Thad and Phyllis had questions, two different questions, but I think you know who Thad and Phyllis are.
Did they want to ask them or?
And you can unmute Thad and Phyllis.
Are they here?
Hi, Eric.
Hi, Thad. Hi, Phyllis.
Anyway, Thad and Phyllis seem to be blacked out, but he's asking about the post office and defunding the post office and as a plot to prevent voting by mail, voter suppression. What's you going to do about it?
Yeah, we're not going to let the president do that. You helped us win the majority in the House, and so we're not helpless anymore. We have the power of the purse. We're going to continue to insist that the post office is funded. Now, this has been, before Donald Trump, a longstanding dream for Republicans to privatize the mail. And so he is kind of, I think there's a couple threads here. There's just always been a priority of the Republicans. By the way, the post office has to do something that no other federal agency has to do, which is they have to pre-fund their pensions about 70 years into the future. So they were set up by the Bush administration with this requirement to fail. So it makes it easy to say that the post office is losing money because they have to do something that no other agency has to do. Two, the president, I think, is being a little bit punitive, not a little bit, he's being punitive because he believes the post office is benefiting with the relationship, from its relationship with Amazon. And so he wants to do anything to hurt Jeff Bezos, who is a perceived enemy of the president's because he owns the Washington Post as well. So it's kind of the president in that punitive streak. And then three, yes, I think you're right. If the president could, fulfill his effort to prevent voting from home, and I encourage all of you to call it, as you talk about it, voting from home, because that's really what it is. And I think it connects more with people who, may be susceptible to some of the claims that the president makes. It's voting from home. It's something that is safe and secure. There's no evidence of any fraud. And it's actually something that, our troops have done going all the way back to the Civil War, wherever home is at the time or wherever they're stationed, voting from their base or voting from home. And of course, we know the president has done it as well. So Ellis, we're not going to let that happen. I will say, in America, a majority wins. By all metrics, Joe Biden is on his way to an earthquake election where we could win the Senate, keep the House, have President Biden. But there's this gauntlet of misinformation, voter suppression, and welcoming foreign interference that he and all of us working to support the campaign will have to get through. And my biggest fear is that we cannot focus too much publicly on voter suppression, meaning we don't want to talk about it over and over as a leading Democratic issue, because the Republicans know that it's a double bonus. If you talk about voter suppression, you are in fact contributing to voter suppression, because people will hear that the vote may not count, or they may have to wait in line too long, and they may not go. So the problem we want is thousands of people waiting for a long time, and then we win the majority, and then we make sure that never happens again because we legislatively fix it. But below the surface, where we're not talking publicly, but we're acting with lawyers in courts and registrar offices and secretaries of state, we're fighting like hell. And so we have to support those causes that do that. But we want to talk about healthcare and corruption. Those are the two biggest issues that can motivate people right now. And beneath the surface, as activists, really make sure people have access. And of course, that includes voting from home.
Well, Phyllis would like to address something that's important also, the coronavirus. She says, how can we accomplish a national plan for it without the obstruction of the president and administration, and also finding people who don't comply with wearing masks? And I'd just like to add that according to the news, the reason we didn't phase out the virus as they did in Europe was we were 50% compliant and Europe was 97%. And part of it was if you got caught on the street in Paris with not social distancing, out at the wrong time, out just wandering around, 250 euros, about 250 bucks. That's a big difference from what we see now. Anyway, your call, Eric.
So Ellis, we are a great country. We're a resilient country, and this pandemic has hit every country, and it's so crushing to see that we have utterly failed a global test of public health. And it starts at the top. We've never had leadership. We've never had a national testing plan. We've never had the distribution of protective equipment that's needed. And so, it's really on all of us. And the confusion the president causes by refusing to, have a national mask mandate or wear a mask publicly himself has had devastating effects. And so, right now what we can do until January 20 is just continue to fund the priorities, as I said, of testing, tracing, protective equipment, and also treatments that work. On the tracing side, South Korea, for example, when someone tested positive, they would trace back up to 30 people. In the United States, it's below 10 on average. So you can see that we just have not invested in the way that we need to. The HEROES Act, by the way, would create a contact tracing corps of 200,000 people. Imagine people who've lost their job because of COVID, who could be put back to work in a public works type fashion, just as we've done before in this country, like the Great Depression, and also do a real public service. So yes, so much more for us to do. And just one more, anecdote that is also data. I don't know if you saw the study that the CDC put out over the weekend that I believe it was in Missouri, where two hairstylists were asymptomatic but tested for COVID. They contact traced who they had interacted with, and they found 139 people who had sat in their chairs between the two of them, 0 cases. And what they found was that both stylists wore masks, and every person who sat in the chair as a client wore masks. So the masks, even when people have COVID and don't know it, they work.
Let's move on to the next one, which is about John Kerndert. Talks about an economist, Stephanie Kelton, who wrote a book called The
Deficit Myth.
The Deficit Myth.
Yes, I'm reading it.
Okay, what is Eric's opinion on supporting less banking industry insiders that want to control on economic, I think they meant our economic recovery for the banking industry's gain, or should we follow what real economists are pushing, say like MMT economists? And that's where Stephanie.
Yeah, so Stephanie Kelton used to work on Capitol Hill. I believe she was the lead financial staffer on the banking committee on the Democratic side, and she's written a book called The Deficit Myth. It's a modern monetary theory, essentially arguing, and she's very prescient because the book was written before we went into this, but that investing in education and jobs and healthcare, while there is a debt associated with it, that the public good outweighs what the debt is, and we ultimately catch up. And it's just some of the myths around deficit spending programs that are quite harsh and hurt people that Republicans have made. So I'm very much in the camp, and Tim and I, when we were council members in Dublin, were in the camp of invest now and save later. So as I said, I just started that book. And so I'm interested to see what she proposes. But the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, told our caucus, the Democratic caucus, back in March, that you cannot spend enough and that it will not be cheaper than it is right now to address this crisis. And so that's the only hope we've had on the administration side. He does have a little bit of independence from the president, but his words have been persuasive to us that we need to keep spending and investing.
Okay, Paulette Kenyon had a question to synopsize. Trump is crazy. Why can't we get rid of him? but he's more verbose than I was.
He knows which animal is the elephant. He knows which day it is. He knows where he's at. He proved that to us yesterday when he was bragging about his cognitive test. And I congratulated him today on Twitter because he tweeted a picture of himself wearing a mask, and I said, he's just crushing these cognitive tests, hitting them out of the park. So he's impeached forever. We will be the ankle monitor that he needs all the way till the election, but the removal will come at the ballot box. And as I said, I'm confident that we can't take it for granted, but we need to carry ourselves with confidence that our values, our conviction is what's going to get us, across the goal line on November 3. And so we're going to be reaching out. As I said, Lisa Tucker and Tim are on the call, but I picked 10 candidates to help in an effort called Remedy, 6 in the House and 4 in the Senate. And we're now working with the candidates on who their targets are for voter outreach. And so we will provide the software, we'll host Zoom parties, and we will do phone banking and text messaging to help on that effort. So very much looking forward to having the clubs help just as they did.
Yes, I was just going to suggest that.
Yeah.
You can count on us, but I should say, relative to Paulette's question, that I had a dream that Biden is being sworn in as president, and he puts his hand down, and the moment he puts his hand down, he becomes president of the United States. And a New York City cop slaps handcuffs on Trump and puts his knee to the back of his head, and it's a collective, I can breathe.
Alice.
Anyway, on to Jeff Coleman's question. He's talking about the HEROES Act, and where do we stand with the HEROES Act? Is I think
thank you.
The question.
Yep, thanks, Jeff. So that again, I laid out a little bit earlier what we did, in the HEROES Act. Open the big piece that I should have led with: $1 trillion in aid for state and local governments. And as our terrific Assembly member Rebecca would tell you, we went from a 10 billion plus surplus in California going into 2020, and now have over a $30 billion deficit. So over a $40 billion swing, and the HEROES Act would backfill for state and local governments what they have spent. The sad truth here is that the bus drivers and the janitors at the hospital and many of the frontline workers, the paramedics who've shown up, going into nursing homes, they are the ones who could be laid off first if we do not do that for state and local governments. And so the hope is that as unemployment insurance starts to run out, that is a story that continues to get oxygen everywhere in the country, and that senators recognize that not just on that issue, but so many issues, we have to get them to the table. So
It's about 27 after. Okay.
Okay.
You guys are quite the team. You're good.
We're good. We got all of our questions answered. Now, Phyllis asked me if somebody could ask a second question, and I didn't get back to her. Phyllis, have you got a question all loaded and ready?
No, you.
What was the
You have,
question?
there's a couple in the chat.
Okay.
Should we go through one of those?
Oh,
So,
okay. Can you read them from chat, Bob?
yeah, I'll read it out. So Linda Knapp wanted to know what can be done about the federal forces in Portland.
Thank you, Linda. And I'm actually, when I hop off of this, I'm doing a book talk with Powell's bookstore in Portland. I think it's the largest independent bookstore in the country. And my colleague, Suzanne Bonamici, who represents Portland, is interviewing me virtually. And so, you know, look, I come from a family of police officers, and I was a prosecutor. And I'll tell you one thing about local law enforcement is they don't like, you know, federal law enforcement coming in and, you know, overreaching, you know, what their jurisdiction is. And you're hearing that locally, you know, from Portland and Oregon leaders. And I think what's so frustrating and offensive, downright offensive, is that Republicans have always stood for states' rights. And you have the Homeland Security Secretary saying today that they can go anywhere, anytime with Homeland Security personnel. And that's quite troubling. It's troubling if you believe in states' rights. It's troubling if you believe in civil rights. And it's troubling if you don't want to live in a police state. And so we have, just today, I voted on the House of Representatives floor for an amendment in the Defense Act that would, you know, heighten some of the requirements that would be in place before the president could just do that unilaterally. But again, we have the power of the purse, and, you know, we're going to have a budget, a government that needs to be funded by the end of September again. And, you know, we have a long list from that to what the president's doing with Bill Barr and others that we're going to seek to, again, use the leverage we have to try and have some rule of law in this country.
I'm going to ask you to put on your prosecutor's hat. I saw on television one of those stormtroopers turned out to be Homeland Security shoot an innocent civilian, apparently shot him in the head. He survived. He's in the hospital with a concussion, the last I heard. And nobody's even gone as far as trying to identify who that person was. And that's attempted murder. Doesn't matter what kind of uniform you're wearing, that's attempted murder. Don't they go after people like that?
I haven't seen that, Ellis. Send that over to me. But I do think
it was on MSNBC over and over again.
I do think, you know, officers should have to identify themselves, and that's another, you know, we've seen since the Black Lives Matter protests, you know, these unidentifiable officers, and that's also not acceptable. So, Ellis, I'll end with this, if that's okay. Bill Woodruff, thank you, Bill, for speaking up about Bryn Kennedy in the Sacramento suburbs. That is one of the 10 candidates we're helping. That would have been the 8th seat we would have flipped back in November 2018. It's definitely within reach for us to win this time. And so she will be someone that we will be working with to beat Tom McClintock. Again, one little fun story about Tom McClintock. He's on the Judiciary Committee, a Republican on the committee, refuses to wear his mask, by the way, just will not wear his mask. But during impeachment, McClintock would always say during the debate that the Democrats are trying to undo an election. And he would say that over and over and over, that we're trying to undo an election. Fine, I get it, that's your talking point. But it dawned on me probably the 4th or 5th time that he said this, and many of you will remember this. Tom McClintock tried to undo the election of Gray Davis when he ran against Gray Davis in the recall election. These guys, they just have the shortest memory, but that's a good reason, Bill. Another one.
It's called chutzpah.
Thank you again, Tri-Valley Dems. I can't wait to see everyone in person.
Thank you.
Okay, is that indicating our time is up?
I'm going to this Portland event virtually now, but I also owe Michael a response, and I'm going to make sure I send that over to Michael.
Okay, I see him for coffee on Friday over Zoom. I'll mention your response to him at that time.
Thank you very
but
much.
thank you very much, and
Hope to see you soon.
Unmute everybody and let's give
Thank
the
you.
Eric a
Thank
hand.
you, Eric.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Jeff. Thank you, guys.
Oh, push it up so I can see who else has a
I
question.
have your book. That's what I'm holding up.
Oh, you got the book. Very good.
I want to see who's there.
There's a lot
Oh.
of people here. I promised Elena Condis a couple of
wait.
minutes.
Wait, I want to say something to Tim. Oh, hi, Tim.
Hi. Hi, Sharon.
Fremont's preparing something to send to Eric about businesses and how they've been affected by
I
the
can't believe
COVID. And one of the businesses that is my daughter's, the Simca Sisters, and her name is Tanya Shore.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Elena Condis is one of the 2 judge candidates for Superior Court judge in Alameda County. Both of them will be speaking to the club tonight. Elena first here, and Mark Fickus, who I believe is on here anyway, but said he wanted to speak during the general meeting at 7 o'clock. So Elaine Condis for a couple of minutes, and then we're going to adjourn until about 6:45 and bring the meeting back to order at 7. So Elaine.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me this evening.
Can you remove the questions from this?
Yes, I'll get it.
Everybody mute except Elena.
There we go. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi. Thank you for having me this evening. As you know, my name's Elena Condes, and I'm running for Superior Court Judge in Alameda County. I first want to also thank you for your support and endorsement through the March primary, and with your support, I was the lead vote getter in the primary. I'm running for judge because I believe in justice and compassion. I want to do my part to ensure that everyone has equal access to justice and a level playing field in the courtroom. As a defense attorney in Alameda County for over 26 years, I have seen the justice system has not worked for everyone. 80% of the judges in Alameda County come from prosecution or civil practice backgrounds. And in this time, where meaningful change seems like a possibility, albeit from tragic events, the perspective of a defense attorney is ever more important to meet this moment. I've been endorsed by a diverse coalition of community leaders, including the Alameda County Public Defender Brendan Woods, the incumbent judge Carol Brosnahan, and former Alameda County prosecutor, now Congressman Eric Swalwell. And they know the depth of my legal experience, my integrity, and my commitment to equal access to justice. They're joined by many others, including Tim Sabranti from the Chabot Las Positas Board of Trustees, who is here this evening, California State Senator Nancy Skinner, Assemblyman-member Rebecca Bauer-Cahan, Fremont Council Member Vinnie Bacon, Livermore Mayor John Marchand, Livermore City Council Member Trish Monroe, the Alameda County Building Trades Council, and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW Local 595, among many others. To learn more about my candidacy, please go to elenacondisforjudge.com. Thank you for an opportunity to speak to you all. Thank you for your support in the past, and I hope that you vote for me on November 3rd. Thanks.
Thank you, Elena. Before we adjourn, one quick announcement. Nobody else has heard this besides my wife. Rebecca Bauer-Cahan will be joining us on August 11th. Right now, it looks like 7:30. We'll be sending out Zoom invitations. My hope is that will be the only thing on the agenda, and we'll have a separate meeting for additional endorsements. There are several people who have raised their hand and said they would like the club's endorsement. Until that time, this meeting is adjourned until about 6:45. Mark Fickus will be speaking at the club's general meeting sometime after 7.
Okay, let's see who else is here.
Meeting adjourned.
Let me see who else is there.
They're all bailing out.
Hey, Alice, this is Andy Blighty. How are you, Sharon?
Good.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. I would like to